Muy buenas noches, honorable señor presidente, doctor Leonel Fernández, presidente constitucional de la República y presidente honorífico de la Fundación Global Democracia y Desarrollo, licenciado Luis Manuel Bonetti, ministro administrativo de la presidencia, licenciado Abel Martínez, presidente de la Cámara de Diputados, doctor José Ramón Fadul, ministro de Interior y Policía, profesora Eligia Amada Melo Cardona, ministra de Educación Superior, Ciencia y Tecnología, distinguidos legisladores, diputados, académicos, públicos que nos acompañan en nuestras actividades. Muy buenas noches. La Fundación Global Democracia y Desarrollo pues se complace en darle la bienvenida a este anticipado panel sobre el futuro de Medio Oriente después de Egipto y Túnez. En esta actividad pues buscamos tener una mirada descriptiva y analítica sobre los recientes eventos que han tenido lugar en el Medio Oriente y discutirlos entre un grupo de calificados panelistas que serán presentados más adelante y testigos de excepción que también pues compartirán con nosotros sus experiencias. Nos sentimos muy complacidos de haber podido componer esta actividad y con la presencia de todos ustedes. Este panel pues está siendo visto en vivo desde Telemicro Internacional, Digital 15 y Canal 13, que es una de las intenciones de estos encuentros, pues que tenga la mayor cantidad de difusión posible. La misma se enmarca dentro de la importante agenda temática que desde FUNGLODE hemos querido venir desarrollando sobre los problemas y la problemática del Medio Oriente y el acontecer en el mundo árabe. Esto de una perspectiva desde América Latina y cómo tiene su impacto en la región. Quiero aprovechar la oportunidad, ya que estamos hablando de esa agenda temática, para reiterar y anunciar nuevamente el panel, el seminario que tenemos la semana próxima, que celebraremos en San José, Costa Rica, conjuntamente con la Fundación Áreas para el Progreso y la Paz Humana y la Facultad Latinoamericana de Ciencias Sociales Flaxo. Un encuentro que busca institucionalizar la Alianza Latinoamericana por la Paz en el Medio Oriente y que por 2 días busca analizar el papel de la sociedad civil en América Latina sobre este proceso. Esta actividad estará encabezada por el expresidente de Costa Rica, el doctor Oscar Arias, y se enmarca dentro de esta agenda que queremos desarrollar y perseguir desde aquí, desde FUNGLODE. Aparte de reiterarle la bienvenida, lo vamos a dejar ahora con un breve video de introducción que va a dar apertura, ¿no?, al tema de esta noche, y luego continuaremos con la presentación de los panelistas y el desarrollo del panel. Muchas gracias y buenas noches.
President Zine al-Abidine Ben Ali is no more. Images of him are being ripped down, burnt and trampled into the dirt. Tunisians are joyous about his departure and they want to erase every trace of him and his regime. Buildings in the capital and towns and cities across the country have been pillaged and destroyed. Protesters attacked the railway station. The bill to restore the damage will be huge. But this is a country where politics and public confidence need to be rebuilt first. Adam Minot is in shock, reeling under a state of emergency. Shops and offices are boarded up. Food and fuel are scarce. The immediate future is perilous.
Gather! Youth in Algeria are taking to the streets to protest rising food prices. The cost of flour, sugar, and oil have doubled in the past few months, reaching record highs. Protesters set trash bins and rubber tires on fire and started throwing fireworks and stones at anti-riot police. In response, police used tear gas to disperse the protesters.
This is the 10th day of unrest in the capital, Sana'a. Protesters began marching early in the morning from the university to the Ministry of Justice. All the time chanting, the people want the fall of the regime.
Many believe that the recent measures to be insufficient. One protester, wrapped in an Algerian flag, said that he was marching against price increases, but also in solidarity with the rest of the Arab world.
Welcome to Oman's new open-air debating forum. Feisty speeches, attentive audiences. Globe Roundabout has begun to attract activists from across the country, drawn by the opportunity to voice dissent in a way that's simply unprecedented.
Well, I am seeing a remarkable scene in front of me now, because I'm just standing on a bridge which runs over the Pearl Roundabout, and on a road which is 3 lanes wide. There are a column of people, I would say 30, 40 abreast, and it goes for, I'm told, 3 kilometers. I can certainly see tens of thousands of people. They are waving their flags, red and white Bahraini flags, and moving towards Pearl Roundabout. On another road into the roundabout, there is another column I can see in the distance, also coming to the same place. It is a monumental demonstration, and it is an attempt to show the ruling family here that the people's demand for political reform.
Well, there's no doubt about it. The calls for reform and revolution elsewhere in the Arab world have now touched a nerve here in Morocco. The people here are calling for constitutional reform and greater freedom. You can see the banners, some of them saying the people want freedom, the people want a new constitution, the people want change.
Everyone is absolutely angry and he doesn't get the picture yet. I don't know what he's waiting for. But everyone in Tripoli is against him. I would die just to see Libya free. Everyone here is ready to have a bullet in his chest.
some information that some opposition groups have also weapons. I like to be clear. If opposition groups commit crimes, their rules will also be investigated. We will be impartial.
Just the start of the process. Across this region, people are now risking everything for a better life.
These people are angry and they feel the best. Simply doesn't know about it.
They've been protesting here all morning. People going on the street.
There are people watching all of this on TV and wondering if they can do the same thing. However this ends, it's going to change the Middle East.
Pues con este preámbulo que nos da una visión no gráfica y audiovisual de cuáles han sido los principales eventos que han acontecido en el Medio Oriente, en el mundo árabe, vamos a entrar, ¿no?, a este panel que busca ver cómo se va a tratar y cuál será la perspectiva de Occidente de cómo vamos a lidiar con este nuevo Medio Oriente que está surgiendo, que está evolucionando con estos eventos. Acto seguido, entonces, le vamos a pasar la palabra al señor Mustafa Abunabá. Mustafa es empresario dominicano de origen libanés, de origen árabe, quien ha trabajado muy cercanamente con nosotros en lo que es esta iniciativa que busca, ¿no?, analizar y estudiar desde una perspectiva crítica esta temática. Y con esto será nuestro moderador en la noche de hoy y pasará a hacer la introducción del panel y a presentar a los panelistas. Así que...
Thank you, Marco. Good evening, everyone. Your Excellency, Dr. Leonel Fernandez, Ambassador Wendy Chamberlain, Dr. Shibri Talhami, Ms. Maha Hamdi, and Mr. Ayman Saudi. Excellencies, dear guests, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome all of you to this special and timely forum. Actually, it's 1 year ago to the day that, upon the initiative of His Excellency President Fernandez, FUNGLODE hosted the first lecture on the origins and evolution of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. This was followed by a FUNGLODE Peace Forum at Cap Cana during the last week of July 2010. In November of last year, FUNGLODE invited the ambassadors of Palestine, Israel, Jordan, the United States, and France to a panel discussion that was moderated by our tonight's guest, Dr. Shibli Talhami. The ambassador discussed the Palestinian-Israeli peace negotiations. I would like to take this opportunity tonight to announce that FUNGLODE, as part of its international activities, is sponsoring a forum in San Jose, Costa Rica, together with the Oscar Ayres Foundation for Peace and Human Progress and the Federation of Latin American Social Sciences. The forum is titled Latin American Alliance for Peace in the Middle East, the Role of Civil Societies in Supporting Palestinian-Israeli Peace. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are honored to have with us 4 distinguished and special guests. We have with us 2 prominent experts on the Middle East issues, Ambassador Wendy Chamberlain and Dr. Shibli Talhami, who have come from Washington to be with us, and 2 young leaders who have come all the way from Egypt to bring to us an eyewitness account of the revolution of the people of Egypt. Maha Hamdi and Ayman Saudi are both leaders who participated in the peaceful revolution that brought about the end of the stagnant regime of President Hosni Mubarak and opened the door for the new democratic Egypt. Ambassador Chamberlain and Dr. Talhami will discuss the people's revolution in the Arab countries that already have succeeded in overthrowing 2 of the longest tenured dictators, Ben Ali of Tunis and Mubarak of Egypt, and threatens to end Gaddafi's 42 years absolute reign over Libya and to topple the 30 years old regime of Ali Abdullah Saleh of Yemen. The people of Bahrain, Oman, Jordan, Algeria, and Morocco have taken to the streets to demand fundamental changes in all the spheres of their political and social life. People are demanding the democratization of the political systems in their respective countries and to hold their leaders accountable for their conduct. These people's revolutions that are engulfing the Arab land from Oman to Morocco are unique in the sense that they are essentially peaceful and were initiated and led mainly by young, educated groups and not by the traditional established opposition political parties. It is clear that these revolutions have taken everyone by surprise, including the United States of America and Western Europe, who seem not to have anticipated this outcome. This was evident from the inconsistent statements by American officials and their European counterparts. The panelists will try to analyze this phenomenal event and what its repercussions will be for both the region and the world. Dr. Shibli Talhami, who is no stranger to FUNGLODE, is an accomplished scholar, a political analyst, and a frequent guest on TV and radio talk shows not only in the United States, but the world over. Dr. Talhami is a professor at the University of Maryland and a member of the Advisory Council to President Obama. He is the author of many books and a lecturer on Middle East issues. He is also an advisor to the Brookings Institution. Ambassador Wendy Chamberlain is the president of the Middle East Institute of Washington. Ambassador Chamberlain has a long and distinguished career as a United States diplomat. She served in several Arab countries and as ambassador to the United States, to the Republic of Laos, and to Pakistan. She participated in the reconstruction of Iraq and Afghanistan. In addition to her service in the State Department, she served as the deputy of the High Commissioner for Refugees. Ambassador Chamberlain served in various executive positions in counterterrorism. She is an expert on Middle East issues. These two distinguished guests will tackle questions such as, what are the possibilities that this revolution will achieve the goals and objectives set forth by the people? What are the chances that the old guard may not succeed in co-opting it or not succeed in derailing it from its course? Judging from the developments in Tunisia and Egypt thus far, what are the main hurdles that should be overcome in order for the revolution to stay on the right track to progress in an orderly manner toward democracy, economic and social development? How will these changes impact the Arab-Israeli conflict? What should the United States do and how it should formulate its positions vis-à-vis the new situation? Are these changes irreversible? What are the risks of failure? How will the success of this peaceful revolution affect the debate between those who advocate armed struggle versus those who argue for peaceful methods in the struggle against Israeli occupation? Is the fate of the remaining Arab dictatorships already sealed, or may they succeed in weathering this political earthquake? We hope to be enlightened by the insight of our distinguished guests and by the questions and comments from the audience. Now I give the floor to Ms. Maha Hamdi and Ayman Suedi to share with us their unique experience, what were their thoughts prior to January 25th, what was the ceiling of their expectations at that moment, did that change as events evolved, was there a strategy, an action plan behind the revolution, or was it a spontaneous act? What did they think of Mubarak's two speeches? What's to prevent special interest groups from hijacking the success of the revolution and going to the Tahrir Square again and again to implement other agendas? What do they expect now, and how do they see their role from now on? Please, Ayman and Maha, go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. President. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So first of all, I'm honored to be among all these crowd and ambassadors, of course. I would like to mention that I'm talking on behalf of myself. Leader is a big, word for us. We're not leaders, we're just people that witnessed and participated in this event or this march or this revolution. It's a real revolution. We believe it's a real revolution. So I just wanted to mention first that the success of this revolution, that there was no leaders for the first time. I think this is very strange, very weird for people to hear this, but truly there was no leaders. It's the momentum, it's the impact of a whole generation that was really looking for a better future. Very simply, it's big words. I know that in politics, big words do really mean things, but I think the success of this revolution was its in simplicity. Definitely, there was no real planning on the level of political ideas or on the level of maybe there was some organization, and as Mr. Mustafa was saying and we're discussing, maybe a little bit of logistics organization. And even these organizations that happen among what we know, which is the Facebook, which is the Twitter, BBMs on the BlackBerry, meetings, but not underworld or secret meetings. They were meetings like we were meeting in cafes or discussing what's going on in our country. So this is how it started. Definitely there was things that clicked and inspired us. There was lots of violence that inspired to do this, but lots of violence that we faced in Egypt itself, maybe in the last 10 years, and it was accelerating. It was really going into a speed that we couldn't sustain anymore. I think it was very basic. Nobody planned for it. If anybody can says that yes, this was our objective, and at the beginning we wanted to bring down the regime, no. Maybe the march of the 25th was just to say, especially to the Ministry of Interior, enough being that aggressive, enough being that, unfair. Yes, the ministry was representing the regime, but day after day, when the aggression was going on and was increasing, we were really, appointed, and we were really, now we said the whole regime should go down. And the development of the revolution, which is different than any other revolution, was going day by day, maybe hour per hour, depending on action and reaction of what's going on in the ground. We cannot say it's that, it was not that organized, and this is the good thing. It was simple and straight and from the heart. There was no big words, there was no big plans, and I think when things comes from the heart, it goes into the heart, and I think we achieved our an objective that even for 30 years people dreamt about and they couldn't do. So if I can say this is the start, this is how it went at the beginning, and I let Maha continue a little bit.
Good afternoon. First, let me thank you for inviting us to this meeting, and let me say we are honored to be here and to represent, maybe we're not representing all the Egyptian youth, but at least we're representing what happened in Egypt and what we witnessed. Ayman said most of the things that should be said. What I want to say is we were looking at what happened in Tunisia, in Egypt, and we were saying, will the day come and when something like this will happen in Egypt as well? Is it possible that we can do the same thing? And there was a phrase that was said in the revolution in Tunisia. They said they wanted the people wanted the regime down, and this statement, as simple as it is, it became like a slogan for all the Arab world. The people want the regime down. They want the bad regime down. They want the oppression finished. They want everything that we have been suffering from for the past years to be ended once and for all. So what happened on the 25th of Jan was not planned, planned to be the way it did. We only was thinking of making a march, just a simple march to say to the police forces that we are not happy with the way they are treating the people. It was a simple march, it was a simple way of saying that we had enough. Nobody expected it to be that big, nobody expected things to take the way that they did. But I think the way they treated us, the way they acted to the people, is what made things go that way. We're hoping for things to get better. We're hoping that what we did will continue, because I think we just made the start. We just opened a path for a better future. We hope that we will be able to continue on this path for a better future for all the Arab world and of course for Egypt. Thank you.
Maha. I'll pass now the floor to Ambassador Chamberlain and Dr. Shibli to give us an overview or their thoughts on what brought this series of events to take place in the first place, starting from Tunisia, Egypt, and maybe give us an overview from their experience about other Arab countries and where do they think this will be heading. And go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. President, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here tonight and with such a distinguished audience, and an honor to be at such a distinguished foundation, and with our friends from Egypt, my admiration and my respect. You know, before we were coming in, we were talking earlier, and they asked, and Mustafa asked us a series of questions. Did the United States see this coming? And I think the answer is yes and no. Certainly, if you go back to the President George Bush's period, there was a great emphasis during his presidency on democracy throughout the Middle East and throughout the world, sort of a negative reaction to that because of the unpopularity of some of his other policies. But with President Obama, even before January 25th, there was a great emphasis in his policies towards building bridges to the peoples of the world and giving them space to develop their own types of governments. We didn't really press democracy, but we did press ties to people and to civil society from all of the institutions in the United States, not just the State Department. And yes, we knew there would be change in Egypt. President Mubarak is a very old man, is sick, cancer. We're lots of analysis on the succession. Would it be his son Gamal? Would it be yet another military man, in that case Suleiman? And we knew that the youth in Egypt would play a big role in the future. And throughout the Middle East, where a lot of analysis looked at how large the youth bulge was throughout the Middle East. In Egypt, I'm not sure of the statistic, perhaps Dr. Shili Tahani knows, but in most Middle Eastern countries, young people are the majorities of the population. In Jordan, for example, 80% of the population is under 35. But we didn't know that it would happen this way. And in fact, I think it's fair to say that most analysts in the West and the United States were a little bit afraid, a little bit nervous about the youth bulge and how it would play in the future of the Middle East. We saw in the youth bulge a large population that was jobless, frustrated, in Egypt's case, overeducated without being able to get jobs, unable then to get married until late in their 20s. I think they call it the waiting period. That creates a certain anxiety among a young population. We saw the youth bulge throughout the Middle East as a population that the Al-Qaeda and the extremists, religious extremists, could exploit. We saw them exploited during the Iraq War, when so many from Northern Africa, from Tunis, from Egypt, from Libya, were recruited from internet cafes to go into Iraq as suicide bombers. And we worried about this effect, but we didn't see this positive movement coming. This caught us by surprise. And I can't tell you the great admiration and pride and exhilaration that has just pulsated through not just those in the United States that follow events in the Middle East and our group, but throughout the Middle East and throughout the world. That when the youth did speak in Tunis, when it did speak in Egypt, its themes were inward-looking. It was they asked for good governance. They included gender. It was peaceful. Passing out pamphlets from Gandhi and Mandela. It was what it was not was important. It was not anti-American, anti-Israel. It was not extremist. It was not negative. It was entirely positive. And for that, you have my admiration.
Good evening, President Fernandez, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor for me to be here. Thank you to the FUNGLODE Foundation for organizing this. I would like to just give you my own interpretation of what's happening in the Middle East as a student of the region, as someone who's been studying it for decades. it's very important for us to understand what is happening, not just in Egypt, but across the region. As you saw, there's a sweeping mood that is historic, and we have to understand what it means. First of all, it is clear this is not a food revolution. This is not first and foremost about the economy. They were initially, when we saw the uprisings in Tunisia, they were called food riots. In fact, they were not. And don't get me wrong, we all understand how important the economy is, how important food is. They're very important for all people. They're important for the Middle East. The economy is an issue. Poverty is an issue. The gap between rich and poor is an issue. But at the core of what's happening is something far bigger than the economy. This is first and foremost about dignity and freedom. And you can hear it across every single country, that this is first and foremost about dignity and about freedom. And you can see it also in the type of people who were the activists early on, including our two guests from Egypt. I just returned from Egypt and Tunisia and went out and talked to a lot of the young people also like them who participated. Many of them are not poor, or certainly not uneducated. In fact, to the contrary, they're better educated than the average, and they're better off than the average. And so this, in the first place, was more about something much deeper, and something that we have been studying for a long time. When Wendy says we were surprised for sure, no one anticipated the timing, but we have not been surprised historically. I have been conducting public opinion polls in the Arab world every single year for a decade. And every single year, we have captured a widening gap between publics and governments in the region, every single year. And in fact, every single year, I come back and I say, my question as a political scientist is not when will Arabs have reason to revolt, but it's always been every single year, why haven't Arabs revolted already? That has been the question. We can find it in terms of not only the differing opinions that people had from their governments, both on domestic issues and on foreign policy issues, but even more on what I call issues of identity. We were talking earlier about were Egyptians proud of their flag when they were holding the flag. Today, Egyptians are proud of the flag. If you asked a decade ago, as I did in my polls, in a place like Egypt, are you first an Egyptian or first an Arab or first a Muslim or Christian? The overwhelming majority was, I'm first an Egyptian. In 2010, in my poll, only 1/3 said, I'm first Egyptian. And the reason for it is there was, when you are in a situation where the people who represent you are people you're not proud of, when you go to outside, to whether you come to the Dominican Republic or you go to Europe or you go to another Arab country, are you proud to be an Egyptian? There was a sense of a lack of pride. And I think it's not a surprise that a couple of weeks ago in the big celebration where there were up to 4 million people in Cairo, one of the slogans was, "Irfa rasak inta Masri," raise your head, you're an Egyptian, be proud. The essence of the pride that we see across sweeping the region in terms of people being proud of being Tunisian or being Egyptian or being Arab is so overwhelming. We have not seen anything like this in ages. Maybe close to it in 1973, after the 1973 war, maybe after the Suez crisis, when the Egyptians and Arabs were seen to be standing to Western imperialism. But this is even on a bigger scale. In fact, I would say this is, I've been calling it the Great Arab Awakening. To my mind, it is most certainly the most important Arab public awakening since the end of World War I. And I don't think this is an episode that is likely to die. And the reason I say that is the following. It's very important to understand what is empowering the young generation. We know that there's been anger. It's not hard to explain why people want to get rid of tyranny, why people want to have a voice. But what we need to understand is that the dynamic that made it happen now is something revolutionary. In my own judgment, based on the studies that I've done for a whole decade, it is, in fact, the impact of the information revolution. One of the things that we had assumed as analysts is that it's not enough for people to be angry to have a revolution. Absolutely true. In part because you need people to have organizations to be able to make a difference, to have an impact on governments. And governments understood that, so they prevent political parties, they prevent social movements, they preempt actions, they monitor everyone, they remove charismatic leadership. They do everything they can to prevent the organization from succeeding in turning the anger into a revolution. That's been the history in much of the Arab world for decades. And what we've seen in this particular case is really what amounted to a spontaneous, non-ideological, peaceful revolution that was overwhelming, that was rapid, and that succeeded. And that has been enabled by the information revolution. And the information revolution had really three aspects to it that we have to understand. That's why I think this is an empowerment that is with us to stay. It's not going to go away tomorrow. It's going to be here for years to come. Number one, it was really the satellite television revolution. We discovered that, in fact, that has taken away the monopoly of information from governments. Governments no longer monopolized information. A decade ago, when I asked in Egypt, where do you get most of your information, the overwhelming majority said Egyptian TV. In 2010, 88% say Al Jazeera TV from Qatar is either number one or number two source of news for them. In every single Arab country that we study, the first source of news for the people are from outside their own country, not from their own country. It deprived governments of the monopoly of information. Number two, it opened them to the rest of the world. They know that there's something better than they have out there, and they know that the rest of the world also is watching them, and that's empowering in and of itself. It's motivating and empowering. And number three, it is the interactive part of the internet that has just expanded over the past 5 years. The social media is part of that, that you can actually coordinate and organize in ways that we have never witnessed before without the need for political parties, without the need for social movements. And for that reason, you can have almost a spontaneous leadership, a leaderless outpouring of expression of the voice of the people in ways that we have seen so far. And I think this dynamic is with us to stay. This genie is out of the bottle. No one can put it back in the bottle. The voice of the people in the Middle East will be heard. It doesn't mean that in every place it's going to replace the government. It doesn't mean that it's the only factor in politics. We know politics depends on all sorts of things, including the distribution of power in society. Militaries will matter. The economic interests will matter. But the voice of the people will be heard. There is no government in the Arab world in the future that will ignore public opinion in the way that they have for decades. And I think it's going to affect the relationship between the Arab world and the rest of the world in a big way. And I think we're going forward, not backward, even if there will be a lot of bumps in the road and sometimes, unfortunately, bloodshed, as we are seeing in Libya. But in the end, I think not only are Egyptians and Arabs are better off for what's happening, but I think the rest of the world will be better off as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor, for your kind remarks. I want to go with some questions to our guests from Egypt, Ayman and Maha. Ayman, you mentioned that when the group started talking about going out to Tahrir Square, there was no strategy, there was no plan. You just went there on the hope of bringing attention to the abuses of Ministry of Interior. However, as we know, the result was completely different. I would like from you to take us through your thoughts of the evolution of the events from the 25th until the downing of the regime. what happened, what caused what, and how you in the square with your colleagues were dealing with the situation and improvising to get the results that we have. Can you please touch on that?
I think on the 25th, before the 25th, there was many, emails and many things that were put on the wall, on the Facebook and on the Twitter and throughout the BBM, just to mobilize as much as people as we can. So maybe we can look at it at the beginning as if it was a head count revolution. The more you get people, the more you will be more powerful. It's like a wall. The more you put bricks, the more it will be stronger. So the bricks of this wall were the people, normal people, even if they didn't have, as Ambassador and Doctor says, any ideology, any background. The only common thing was that everybody was fed up. Nobody was listening, and everybody was fed up. So anyone, guys, who is fed up, just join, and we will see what will happen. This was the case on the 25th. It was not, on the 25th, I don't see the number of people was not that big. It was very easy to reach Tahrir Square, okay? Of course, the Ministry of Interior had made some of their usual games. They caught some activists, they put some checkpoints and blocks, but it was not as aggressive as later on. On the 25th, everything went normally the whole day, as if government is very understanding, as if they became very democratic, but I think it was a trap. So at night, things went completely different. They started to hit on the demonstrators, they started to hit on the activists, and they catched and put lots of people in jail, because we have this emergency law. So if we are only three, they can pick you up at any point of time. So it was very frustrating. The second day, everyone started to talk about what happened in Tahrir Square. There was other cities in Egypt. We have to say that nationwide it started to boil. I mean, all the groups, they start to put on the Facebook, on the internet, the pictures of what happened, the pictures of the police trying to catch. People started to call out, guys, we're not finding our friends where they are. They went outside yesterday and we cannot find them anymore. So 26th, 27th, and everybody was talking about the big march, the 1 million people march on the 28th. Things started to get more serious. I mean, not organized, but we had to have plans, because we have seen that there was reaction. On the 25th, if I put myself on the other side, I think they were saying, the government, I mean, or the regime, guys, it's the same thing as usual, let them do whatever they want, and we know how to stop it. So they thought they could stop it, but I think they were slower, they were old, they were like the dinosaur. The blood was taking too much time to go to their heads. We were more like rabbits. I mean, it was much easy for us to take decisions, because also there was no leader. We were not that big. It was only small groups, and each group, even we didn't know each other. They were talking. Yes, there was groups like 6th of April, like Kifaya, lots of activist group, and these groups were hit 2 years and 1 year ago, and they were really hit. But everybody decided to continue, even people. So on the 25th, I went at night, and the second day, I met my colleague. By the way, we were working in the same company. We never talked about who is going where. We never knew. The second day, she told me, did you went there? I told her, yes, I went. I was a little bit afraid, so I went at night, just to see what will go on. I told her, were you there? She told me, yes, I went in the morning. They were hitting a little bit around 2 o'clock, so Yes, I left around 6, 7 o'clock. So great. What do you think? I told her, we're not going to make it. I think it's, we're trying, but it's as they are convincing us, they are trying to convincing us because for many years, we were brainwashed. Truly, we were brainwashed and we thought that we couldn't do anything. I think the proper word that you said is not even for years, Doctor, but we lost our identity. Please, yani, if I have something to say to all the regimes, all the governors, all the presidents, listen to your people and don't try to kill their identity. People loves their countries. They are patriotic. So you're not the only guys who are patriotic in the country. There are other people that really cares about this country. So it's very important. So on the 28th, everybody, it started in different places in Cairo, also in Alexandria, groups and groups, mobilization. And it was the war on the 28th. I didn't attend any war, 73. It was history for us, only in books, 70, 67, 52. These are wars that we are studying in history books. So on the 28th, just to cross some bridges, I don't know, you have seen some picture. These are live picture. We brought them from there. They were not on any news channel. And we had to cross some bridges to reach Tahrir Square. And believe me, it took us around 8 hours to 10 hours to reach Tahrir Square. Getting tear gases, plastic bullets, all kinds of things we've never seen. We're not soldiers. I made my military service only for 1 year in an office, so I don't know anything about guns and rifles. But what happened that, yes, we were afraid. We were really afraid. Also, as thank you very much for your analysis regarding this. This revolution was not a food revolution. It's not a food revolution. I was explaining to Mr. Mustafa. I think the majority is coming from a very decent background, very well-educated background. Everybody speaks at least one language more than what we're speaking. So. The thing is why should we stay like this anymore? Or else we should leave the country. I mean, I was thinking I have one of two options, whether starting looking for another nationality or stays in one country and try to make it better. I think everybody took the decision to stay in his country and make it better, and this is very important for us. So on the 28th, we were bombarded. Really bombarded. Not, yes, the only thing that was missing was helicopters maybe, and we saw it in Libya. So yani, they finished the movie for us, but in Egypt there was everything. Took us 10 hours. We reached the square with 300 martyrs. 300 martyrs that day. And this is very sad. When you see people from your own blood, maybe cousins, maybe relatives, and they are shooting on you. We have seen people like 1 meter away from you, they are falling down. Really, guys, they are 25, 22 years old. They were dreaming of having a better future, and they went. They're not with us anymore. So I think every minute inside the field, I call it a field for the 20 days, it was a field. People were making decisions. We were talking to each other, guys, we have to continue. If I see one of these young people dying just in front of us because he just wanted to reach a square to say that I'm not happy, I think it would be a shame for us to return back home and stay and sleep and say, wow, okay, and watch TV and maybe look at the news. And so everybody was very decisive, and we wanted to continue. We went there. People stayed there. Even we were going back at home 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, just to take a shower or to come back the second day in more fresh. Sometimes most of the times there were lots of people sleeping there in the square. It was very funny. We had lots of fun, by the way, there. Yani people from outside, they were looking, but I mean, we have never seen that solidarity. We thought that everyone was isolated in an island. So sometimes when there is a common ground, there is a common goal, a real goal, not just something that is fictitious. Everybody was around this. Everybody, all genders, all ages, Muslims, Christians, people that even leftist, rightist, I mean, everybody was there. Let me tell you that for 20 days in Tahrir Square, there are 2 churches. 2 churches. No policeman for 20 days. Not a single police guy. And nothing, none of them were touched. So I don't think that the people, we are not doing this to our countries. There are really, they have the hidden agendas. They were telling us when we are in Tahrir Square, these guys, they have hidden agendas. Maybe they are pushed from the United States. Other people, they were saying on the fanatic for the Islamist or for the Muslim Brotherhoods, the others are pushed from Iran. It's not the truth. We're pushed by ourselves, but what we wanted to do to our country, I mean, it was not big at the beginning. It was, believe me, without any big word, it was simple. We want to get the regime out of this country. A regime means all this mentality or this old school. Old is not a shame. The shame is not being able to listen and to communicate to other people or to other generation. This is a shame. Old, we're all getting old. It's normal. But the shame is that these people, they forgot that at the end there are people who will tell them, did you do things wrong or right? So the momentum was speeding every day, and you go back at 2 o'clock in the morning, you start BBMing or chatting with your friends, and the second day, more people are coming and different people are coming. This is the good thing. This is the essence of this revolution. Until a very sad date, another date after the 28th, it was the, 2nd of February? 3rd of February. 3rd of, I think. 2nd or 3rd of February. Yes, it was, we call it the Black Wednesday because it was a movie. It was Indiana Jones. I think everybody saw it. It was a movie. We never expected it. This one night before there was a speech from the president, okay, and this speech was very emotional, very emotional. We're like, I think this is the common ground between Middle East and Latin America especially. We're very emotional people. I mean, we are all when there is a song, when we really care about our families. We do appreciate elder people. We appreciate our parents, our families. We have this, I mean, bond. So the guy went on TV, on air, and he started, I have to say chapeau for the guy who wrote him this speech that day. It was very emotional. So it happened that suddenly I was very depressed that day because I saw people around me and many people were depressed. For me, let me be very frank, at the beginning it took me like a couple of hours. Does this guy change made up his mind? Is he speaking the truth? Should we believe him at least for the coming 5-6 months that are remaining, or should we go and continue what we are doing? Because they were never transparent. Why should they be transparent today? Because they are under stress. So it took me a couple of hours. Other people took them more than this. But that day, many people inside the square, they felt that it's slipping a little bit. Because even the square started to be a little bit divided between, okay, let him stay for the coming 6 months. The guy is old, and he spoke again about stability, who is going to do this transition period, and some of these nice techniques. Okay, but Second day, the good thing that everybody went to Tahrir Square. So nobody changed. Yani, inside everybody was thinking, but we have a duty, we have to go there. We have to go to Tahrir Square. We will be standing there till we see what's happening. And then that morning, we saw camels and horses and knives and things that, yes, and things that we only see in movies and we couldn't imagine. It was incredible. And here it turned out 360. 360. The guys, I was there, I left at 6 o'clock because I had to meet other people. But from 2 to 6, I didn't know how these 4 hours passed. Moreover, from 6 to 4 o'clock in the morning, lots of people died. And I think there are more. What has been claimed as 300 martyrs, there are more, and at least more than 2,000 persons wounded. And here there was other technique, snipers. And the bullets were just in the front head. So the good thing is we stood up. We stood up for what we wanted. Every day it was increasing. Every day we were becoming more stubborn. I don't want to say it was becoming a revenge. I don't want to use this word. It's not a revenge. But on the 11th, he decided to leave finally. And so for us, I think this is a new day in Egypt. This should be one of the days that we thought there was always light at the end of the tunnel, and there is light at the end of the tunnel. I think we should do now. We have a role, all of us in Egypt, to do this rebuilding, and I think everybody is determined to do it. So wish us luck. Yeah, this is all I can and can ask for from your side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ayman, but I want to keep the questions on your side before we switch to Ambassador Chamberlain and Dr. Shibli. As we all noticed, the role of the Egyptian military was a key element in the success of the revolution. And as we all know also, after President Mubarak stepped down, we don't know whether he stepped down or was he forced down by the military. That's to be known in the future. But there was interim cabinet by Prime Minister Shafiq, which resigned yesterday, I think, or the day before yesterday. How do you see the role of the military? How do you see this transition take place to changing the constitution, to transparent elections, the dissolving of the parliament? I mean, there is a lot of steps needs to be taken on the ground to take this from conceptual revolution to actually functional government. Where do you see the role of people like yourselves, the people who started the whole process, being part of this? Just a quick answer, please, and then we take it to...
Well, I want to say that the role of the military during the revolution, I think they did what we expected from them. They took care of the revolution and they protected the youth in Tahrir Square. So they, in a way, they helped us in what we want. They protected us and they protected the revolution. But I think after what had happened in Egypt for the past 30 years, we cannot trust anyone that much. We have to be very careful. We have to stay alert and to keep questioning everything that has happened, every decision that is been taken and will be taken, and be very alert of what is happening. We have to make sure that the demands that the revolution asked for will be replied, all of them. We know that we have just started, but it's not ended. And so we can trust only us. We cannot trust anyone else. You want to ask?
I think, as Maha said, the only thing that the military was fair during يعني this is what we see and what most of the people see during the revolution until yesterday. Also, I think they are being very logical in what they are doing. These people we have to help them in a little bit, because in a country like Egypt, these guys were not politicians. They didn't have the right even to speak about it among them. So the way they are dealing, at least they are trying to listen now, to listen and to respond in a fast way, because I think they have learned the lesson a little bit. I tend to agree with Maha. Yes, of course, it's not 100%. There is nothing assured or guaranteed whether somebody or the military might take over again. But they know that there was a strong guy, supposed to be a strong guy for 30 years, and he went down in 18 days. And they are not, they think a lot. If they are trying to do things, I think it will be a confrontation. It won't be like asking a government to go. So they are very smart. They are dealing with the thing in a proper way. And what they are doing, even like Mr. Mustafa said the day before, they accepted the resignation of the PM, and he was a military guy, and the new PM is a 100% pure civilian, and he has been asked to form again the cabinet. So we hope that they will maintain this equilibrium, because also Egypt is not a small country in the region. So we have to understand that till now, even within all this, what's happening, we still have a role. We still have a very big role. I think now people will depend on us more, because they know that there is a country now. There are people that are thinking. So I think the military will do the job. And as Maha said, it's a watch and see. Period, and a day-to-day. Revision of what they are doing, until we come with the solution, which is a democratic political scene, so we can choose our coming president.
Thank you both. Mark, you have a question for Madam Ambassador?
Yes, thank you. I want to move the panel now to Dr. Talhami and Ambassador Chamberlain. And I want both of you to touch on the subject of how far is this trend willing to go. When this whole movement began, outsiders tended to, while recognizing the strength of the movement, they dismissed it as limited. Okay, wait, let's see what happens when they go to Saudi Arabia, or let's see what happens when they go to let's see what happens when they go to Libya. Well, the movement did go to Libya, and we're now witnessing what happened. And it might continue spreading across. So I want both of you to give us your comments on how far you think it's willing to go. For instance, do you think it will ever spread to an emirate model, which hasn't happened yet?
First of all, if the assessment is right, this is not in the first place about food. Rich countries are not going to be spared. Because again, it's more about dignity and freedom, and in all of the public opinions polling that we have done, we see this huge gap between publics and government, regardless of whether the government the people are relatively well off or not. So that issue should be put aside. I will not venture to say that the economy doesn't matter. Again, it does matter, and it does give some cushion, no question, to some governments. But the second thing that we have to remember is that while this is going to spread, and every single country will feel it, in my opinion, it will not spare a single Arab country. There are a couple of elements that are very important. Element number one is that it depends how divided the country is internally, in part. We know that what happened in Egypt and Tunisia is relatively homogeneous population with no major divisions. If you have divided societies, sometimes they fear someone else controlling. Even in Iraq, before we're talking the Sunni and Shia, in Bahrain, we already see that kind of, the monarchy is certainly based on the Sunni minority in Bahrain. We have a Shia majority in Bahrain. Yemen is very divided. And so where there are divisions, sometimes people are more frightened of some faction taking control than the government taking control, and governments use this very well. So that complicates the way it's going to play itself out. We don't know what the outcome will be. Every country will be, I think, feel the heat of the public. I think this empowerment is with us to stay. The information revolution is only going to expand. People are going to only be more empowered than they were yesterday. The internet revolution in the Arab world is so new, I can't tell you how new it is. I have measured in the past 5 years, 5 years ago, when I did the measure of who's using the internet, I didn't have a statistically significant sample to be able to do analysis. Only in the past 3 years have I had enough data to be able to do analysis. That's only expanding. Second point is that isolated countries, oddly enough, are a little bit more buffered for a couple of reasons. One is that in some cases, because the information revolution is part of the instrument that people are able to use to be successful and to link up to the outside world and to organize, the more isolated countries are, the actually less capable the public is mounting an effective revolution, and the more the governments are able to keep the news out when they confront them. We've seen that, like the sanctions on Cuba. What have they done? They've only extended the regime's life for several decades. That may be true even in terms of what's happening in Iran and North Korea. So, and oddly enough, in Libya, where we certainly see a revolution nonetheless, and we see fighting, that country is still a little more cut off, and the information revolution has not caught up as much. And I would venture to say it would have happened sooner, it would have been more effective, and it would have been harder for them to keep some of the things that are ongoing from the rest of the world. The third point has to do with outside interference. Now, most people want to be free of tyranny. They don't want repressive regimes, and that's certainly true of all the Arab worlds. But they don't want to see foreign domination. And it's interesting, those of you who may have not seen an interview with one of the young activists, Wa'il Ghunaim, who was a Google executive who was detained by the regime for 12 days and then released, and he became the initial face of the revolution, not because he was more important than the others. All of these people are really active and involved. It is that because he was detained and had a very moving interview on Egyptian TV right after, he became not only the face of the revolution, but arguably the next day there were more people on the streets because of watching him as he came out to express what motivated him. And one of the things that he kept saying, we're not traitors, we're not traitors. And that's kind of surprising when you somebody who's coming out of a revolution, we're not traitors, because these regimes have always accused people of being, working for somebody else. And the Arab culture, particularly Egyptian culture, is so afraid of foreign domination. It is part of the political culture of the Middle East, really since the end of World War I. That when that accusation is there, it backfires. And one of the extraordinary things about the Tunisian and the Egyptian revolutions is that no one could point and say, this is Iran, this is Al-Qaeda, this is Israel, this is the US. That was very important for its success. And it is the worst thing if there's an appearance of foreign intervention that would, in some Arab states, or trying to engineer an outcome, it makes it less likely to happen. And so I think those three factors will influence how this is going to play itself out. But in every single country, I think, we're going to watch an empowered public. It's going to spill over. People feel it. The sense of pride, we go back to the issue of pride. the people are alive. It's the use of the term awakening, the Great Arab Awakening. It is an awakening. It is one of the things that you saw about the Arab world for the past several decades, and those of us who love the region and go there very frequently, is this depressing sense of resignation, of accepting what they had, of collective and individual humiliation, sometimes not aware of it, but it's present in every single thing that they do. And when you taste that awakening, when you taste that pride, it's very difficult to let go, and I think it's going to stay across the board, and we're going to feel it in every country.
I don't have too much to add to what Shibli has just said. I agree with everything. Just to point out that each country does have some different motivations. If you look at Iran, now Iran is not an Arab country, but the Iranians did stage their Green Revolution revolt long before January 25th, and it was crushed. And they are feeling, they're feeling, well, I've seen the word envious, that it succeeded in Egypt and that they were unable to be successful in throwing off the autocratic clerics that have been very repressive in Iran for so many decades. They tried again, and their leaders were put under house arrest just this week. So the efforts aren't always successful as it sweeps through the Middle East. If you look at some of the, well, I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Ambassador. Anyway, I'd like to take this conversation to a macro level, looking at the region in general. As you know, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is a key issue there, and there's two schools of thought there: armed struggle versus peaceful methods. How do you see these changes taking place, affecting those two thoughts, and where do you see this going? And the other thing is also, what should the U.S. do now based on the new panorama? We know for a fact that Mubarak was an ally of the United States, and so was Zain al-Abidin, and so was Mr. Ali Saleh of Yemen. I would like to have your thoughts on what kind of revisions, what kind of thoughts should the U.S. have, should they revisit their policies regarding their relations with countries in the Middle East, and also the effect on the Palestinian-Israeli issue. Both of you, please.
Well, let me start with the Palestinian-Israeli issue, because the Arab-Israeli issue broadly, I think, is obviously very important. First, one thing to know is that the Arab public has been very angry with Israel, much more angry than the governments are. And to the extent that you're going to have more manifestation of public opinion, that's going to show itself a little bit more in the attitudes. In some ways, I would even go a little bit further, because I think there's a psychology in the region that we have to come to understand. I always believe that the Arab-Israeli issue, particularly the Palestinian-Israeli issue, is what I call the prism of pain through which Arabs see the world. And the reason for it is that the Palestinian-Israeli conflict in particular is really a metaphor for this collective humiliation that Arabs have experienced, both as individuals vis-a-vis their governments, or as a people vis-a-vis their government, or collectively as a region or as a people vis-a-vis the outside world, vis-a-vis the West and imperialism, particularly since the end of World War I. So this prism this issue is very symbolic, and we're going to see it now manifesting itself in the politics of every country in a way that we haven't, that's been hidden. The minute we open up for democracy, people are going to this was not obviously first and foremost about the Arab-Israeli issue in Egypt or Tunisia, but as it unfolds, it's going to become more of an issue in the politics. That's going to put a lot of pressure on the U.S. to do something, because the U.S., there's anger with the U.S. over the issue of Palestine. Most important example recently, obviously, the veto of the resolution condemning the settlements. So the U.S., in fact, there will be increasing pressure on the U.S. as it's trying to reconfigure its policy in the Middle East to meet the aspirations of the people, to mount something on the Arab-Israeli issue, because everybody understands how important it is. Second point is, Egypt, of course, is critical to all of this. The Egyptian-Israeli relationship was not only the anchor of the Arab peace process for the past several decades, but really the anchor of American foreign policy on the Arab-Israeli issue. And when there is uncertainty about the Israeli-Egyptian relationship, that's going to have an impact. That uncertainty will have two aspects to it. One aspect is the Israeli-Egyptian peace treaty. I do not think that is in jeopardy in any foreseeable future. And I say that even if there will be voices that will challenge it within Egypt in the political process. I say that, number one, because it's mutually beneficial to both countries. And number two, because no matter what happens in Egypt in the coming months, the Egyptian military will remain very important for the national security policy of Egypt. They don't want war. They're wedded to this agreement, and they're wedded to the relationship with the U.S. So at the core, I don't think it will be a significant challenge. However, the nature of the political relationship will change dramatically, and it will very much be tied to what happened on the Palestinian issue. What has happened in the Israeli-Egyptian relationship over the past couple of years is that the Mubarak regime and the Israeli government have become essentially the closest regional allies on broader policy. Egypt has become Israel's biggest ally regionally, particularly because Turkey was no longer as central for Israel. And they coordinated on policy from Iran to Hezbollah in Lebanon to Hamas. I think that is going to change because the Egyptian public will not allow that to happen on that scale. And we'll start seeing some of the early manifestation of that, particularly on the policy to isolate Hamas in Gaza. We're going to see something because Egyptian public opinion is not very sympathetic to that. All of that leads me to believe two things. Number one, that Israeli-Palestinian peace in the short term, separate from a comprehensive peace, is less likely, not more likely. In part because the president of Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, is weakened because of these events in the short term. He's weakened because he lost Mubarak, who was an ally of his. He also lost Saad Hariri, who was an ally of his in Lebanon. He had been under pressure from a lot of public opinion based on some of the leaks on the Israeli-Palestinian negotiations. So he needs to strengthen himself first. He needs to find a way to anchor himself to be able to make a deal. What does increase, I think, is the prospect of a comprehensive peace. And the reason that increases is that Israelis always wanted to have a comprehensive peace if they can have it on their terms. But the Arab Peace Initiative was a big incentive for the Israelis, saying, if you make peace with the Palestinians and with the Syrians and Lebanese, even the Saudis and other Arabs are going to recognize you. That was of some value to them, but they had taken for granted the Egyptian-Israeli treaty. Now that Egypt is no longer taken for granted, a comprehensive peace deal that revalidates the Egyptian part of it is worth 3 times more to Israel than it was worth just 2 months ago. And for that reason, in fact, there's far more incentive for the Israelis, for the Israeli public, if there's an Israeli government that really wants to move in that direction, there's far more leverage, there's far more incentive because the Israelis are now in a state of uncertainty. And when a proposal like that is on the table, they will reassess. My own conclusions is that in the short term, it's very difficult for anybody to take a chance when things remain so uncertain. And so I would expect that the U.S. will probably do something in the coming weeks because of the pressure of public opinion and the opportunity that is arising. But it's going to depend, obviously, to a great extent on what the outcome will be in some of these countries, but most especially Egypt.
That's true, and I agree with there too. I mean, I can make a very strong case for why Prime Minister Netanyahu would not want to move towards negotiations, so either with the Palestinians or on a comprehensive peace. And Shibli mentioned a few of them. The relationship with Egypt is now changed fundamentally. It's not, that is to the south, to the north. The Hezbollah and Syria have been emboldened by what's happening. The Iranians have actually, for the first time ever, moved a ship through the Suez Canal into the Mediterranean. And there is some instability on the western border with Jordan. Not the time to negotiate, is what many people in Israel are saying. There are other people within Israel and among their friends in the United States that are saying this is precisely why it's the right time to move and settle with the Palestinians, the creation of a Palestinian state. And I think that the challenge, not just to the United States and those who support peace, but the entire international community is to give some strength and courage to those who would argue that now is the time to negotiate a comprehensive peace, precisely because of all of the changes that have occurred. Look, one of the big uncertainties that are facing Israel today, let's look at it. Israel has been and will remain a very close ally to the United States. The majority of the people in the United States support Israel, and we will continue to do so. But the majority of the people in the United States also support peace, as do the majority of the Israelis support peace. Those are not contradictory statistics. So I think there is an opening, and it's really the job, frankly, of the entire international community to support the creation of a Palestinian state.
Can I just add something to? I think that I'm talking specifically about Egypt. I think that with this revolution, and I hope with what's going to come, when we're heading to the better, I think there are two levels of, ways of dealing with the big powers. The first level is the subordinate level, and the second level is the peer level. I think Egypt now is going to be a peer, not a subordinate, and this is very important to be understood. It's not the time for orders, it's the time to sit on a table and listen carefully and think what is being said from the other side of the table, and this is very important.
Well, thank you very much. I think we'll pass the. Thank you, everyone. We'll pass the floor now to the audience for questions and answers, and hopefully to take advantage of the presence of our panelists here. Microphone? They have a microphone here, or?
I'll talk loudly.
Okay, no, it's okay. Here.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the panelists. This has been amazingly enlightening and very uplifting. Congratulations to Egypt, and congratulations to the whole movement of human dignity. I think that's just wonderful for the entire world. I have a couple of questions for both of you, for Ambassador Chamberlain and Dr. Shinley, with regard to a nascent Palestinian movement among the Palestinian young adults. On one side in Gaza and on the other side in the West Bank. This is a very recent movement of these young adult teams trying to get together to find common ground. Do you see any prospect for success of that, since Hamas has made clear in Gaza that it will violently repress any opposition of any form to its mandates? And that beckons back to Iran. Iran in 1979 had a revolution, and everyone was optimistic, and the result was not as hoped. And now, for the first time since 1979, Iran has sent its ships through the Suez Canal. And do you see any possibility right now in Iran of any young adult movement being able to stare a military force in the face when the military force is supporting the government and made a different choice than they made in Egypt. On the Egyptian side, there was some statement of fear of a hijacking of your success by the old guard. I think happily that's unlikely now. Your revolution was unprecedented. It is now precedented. You are now successful. There is precedent of success. And I think every government in the world, not just the Middle East, takes note of that, and that's good. However, do you see any danger of hijacking by very well-funded, very well-armed, very well-organized religious extremists from anywhere? And how does one go about protecting against that?
Yeah, I'll take the question on Iran. I am not optimistic about young people's coming together in Iran in a successful way like we've seen in Egypt. I think they've tried it. Another very successful technique that the Ahmadinejad government has done, although he's not that powerful within Iran, it's really the supreme leader who's powerful, but a very successful technique for concentrating the power with the clerics and those in power now. They have essentially removed many of the levels of educated bureaucrats and technocrats within the government and have recruited widely throughout Iran young people, not as well educated, but totally beholden upon the government in Tehran. They've brought these young people from the countryside to Tehran. They've given them big cars, they've given them big jobs, they've given them big titles and big salaries. And they have a cadre now in the government in the capital that is totally beholden to the government, that is less worldly, less cosmopolitan, less educated, and less capable, but very loyal. And it's digging deeper into the regime. So I'm not that encouraged by what's happening there.
Before I answer the one on Palestinian issue, I just want to add one more on Iran. The other thing about Iran is, in addition to all the things that Wendy said, is that it's really a truly divided society. In all the public opinion polling that were done, and there were some, you know, we can ask about reliability, but they all consisted. I've seen 6 recently, 6 public opinion polls, all show that the regime has significant grassroots support. So when you have mobilized significant grassroots support, even if you have significant mobilized grassroots opposition, the game is different. It's very different. And that obviously is part of the problem for Iran and anticipating what might happen. Now on the Palestinian issue, you know, remember that in some ways the most important uprising in the past several decades has been the 1987 Palestinian uprising, which happened nearly spontaneously. It was mostly young people, all empowered, all said, we've had enough with occupation. And it happened really when nobody was paying attention to it, because the PLO was out in Tunis. It had been moved from Lebanon, and it was not directly close to them. Arabs were all too occupied with the Iraq-Iran war happening away, and that was the priority. And they took things into their own hands. And certainly, they're capable of doing it again. Now, even without the Arab revolutions that we now are witnessing that are mobilizing a lot, let's face it, if we do not have an end to occupation and a two-state solution happening sometime very, very soon, and some people say the time may have passed already, usually we don't really know when the cutoff is, but it just happens like that, just like with revolutions. You knew that the institutions, whether it's in Gaza or the West Bank, were just going to give way to some wave of public opposition and uprising. So yes, where that might take us, I don't know, and it could happen in both places, but the status quo is just simply not sustainable. either in the West Bank or in Gaza. And that's why the international community has got to do something if you want to prevent that from happening, because there's no question in my mind that we're going to witness something big in the coming months.
Thank you. Ayman, you want to add on? Yeah.
Okay. You were asking about the hijacking the revolution, right? Okay, I think first let me say that the regime have been frightening the people for ages about Muslim Brotherhood will get into power, Muslim Brotherhood will do this, they will do that. We have been frightened for ages, and it has been a concern for a very long time. But I think now people believe they have a power. And me, for example, I am not a pro-brotherhood by any means. And most of the people I know think the same. So I think if we really believe that the people have a decision now and they really have the power in their hands now, I don't think the revolution will ever be hijacked. Because I think if we really have to say where we are going to now, I don't think Egypt will ever be ruled by extremists.
If I may add, I have 2 points. First of all, that during the revolution, the young guys of the Muslim Brotherhoods were there in the square. And by the way, they did very well. And for the first time, they blended with the whole different social classes and with different ideas, especially. So the good thing about it that when there is a taboo, everybody is afraid. You cannot touch it, you cannot get close to it. But if they will be out loud and they will start speaking, everybody will listen. If they make sense, fine and well. If they don't make sense, they will not reach anywhere. Otherwise, also, I don't think they represent more than 20 to 25%. If this is their proper representation, and we're talking about democracy, let's give it to them. They will take it, and they will work with it, but they will not rule. If we have proper I think, ground for democracy, then we shouldn't be afraid of anybody. Thank you very much.
On what you have just said, I think one would hope as an outcome of this revolution is you would have a unity government within a democratic system, and that would open room for all sectors of society to be part in. And like you said, it will be worked out within a democratic system, and hopefully everything should be fine. This scarecrow that Mubarak has been using for 30 years, I think it was evident in the last, as events evolved in the last 2-3 weeks, that this will not fly for the future. So
and strangely that even when the politicians, for example, from the United States were coming to Egypt, they were meeting the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, why neglecting that sector? Why not letting them speak out loud? And then we can just evaluate what they are saying. So this is democracy, I think. Yeah. Or
another question, Ellis? Okay.
Doctor, you indicated how the Arab world rejects foreign dominance. Right now, we have a situation in Libya where people are talking about air exclusion, not letting the Libyan military planes get off the ground. What implications can we expect from either an American or an American and European Union participation, maybe under the banner of the United Nations, intervening in order to halt the drama that is now pervading Libya? What could happen if you have a foreign military intervention?
This is really a very interesting question, and in fact, just as I was in the region, I was in Tunis when things were escalating in Libya, and I was watching all the Arab media on this issue and reflecting on this very question: what would I advise Washington to do when this was happening? And I would have to say, interestingly, about this fear of foreign intervention, something really almost, comedic taking place. I mean, if you look at Gaddafi himself is starting to, say that it is like Israel or the U.S. are behind this Al-Qaeda. He also blamed Al-Qaeda. He's blaming both the U.S. and Al-Qaeda at the same time. Ali Abdullah Saleh in Yemen is talking about some operational location in Tel Aviv basement with American White House intervention to deal with so they all try to use that because they know how this could resonate. But the interesting thing is the public isn't buying it. And this has been part of this whole picture. The public isn't buying it. And in Tunis, interestingly enough, I discovered that actually there was a kind of their perception, particularly of Washington, improved because the U.S. called very quickly for the removal of Ben Ali. The French didn't do that. The contrast helped the U.S. But even early on, there were the WikiLeaks that came out, and they were focused on the Middle East. As you know, some of them were about Tunis, and they were focused on particularly the U.S. calling some American diplomat, I think it was the ambassador, calling the people around Ben Ali a mafia. And they said, well, the Americans agree with us. The public, found that rather refreshing, and so it began changing. Al Jazeera, which had been seen to be among the biggest critics of Arab media against foreign intervention, has been almost calling for foreign intervention in Libya. So you have a public opinion now, because across the board, there is not a single community, I would say, in the Arab world right now that is rooting for Gaddafi. Gaddafi has no constituency at the moment in the Arab world. No one is defending him. And so Arab public opinion across the board is against him, and they want to see him defeated. And when they see what he's doing, they want someone to stop it. So it's a very odd situation in a very odd moment in Arab history of Arab publics, including those who are actually responding to them, such as Al Jazeera Al Arabiya, seemingly encouraging foreign intervention to stop what's happening in Libya. My own view is this: if there are more graphic evidence of what's happening in Libya, because a lot of the reports so far have been, phone reports, but not visual reports, because the media has not been intensely covering Libya, because Libyans have not allowed that to happen. If there were real graphic evidence of massacres, that the momentum in the Arab world would be to do something. And my own view would be is that people would welcome an intervention if it's mandated by the UN. And I think the key here would be whatever the intervention will be, even if it's carried out by the US or NATO or somebody else, they would want some kind of an international cover to give it more legitimacy. But I think they would welcome it.
Let me just jump in here a little bit too. I do agree with Shibli. But there are also, as there are in the Arab world, some conflicting views. In the United States, there are too. You've got a very strong human rights strain to our public that just can't bear the idea of thousands of people getting bombed by their own governments. Particularly one that we have had such a relationship as we have had with Gaddafi. But there is also very little stomach for getting involved in a third war in the Middle East. You heard that from Defense Minister Gates, who was saying, wait, stop. Even instituting a no-fly zone is a pretty aggressive act. And let's be honest, we had a no-fly zone in Iraq for 11 years, and it did not bring down Saddam Hussein. So some have questioned how effective it would be. Yet, I do agree that we will be looking for ways to help brave rebels bring to a quick end to something that's going to be inevitable. It's inevitable that Gaddafi will fall. But the idea of a long, drawn-out, bloody civil war, it doesn't sit well with anybody, but neither does intervention. And even some of the Libyan rebels in the east have said, we want help, but we don't want combat troops. So we have to be very careful how we help in Libya.
There is another kind of intervention that is not military. That could be foreign intervention. The Venezuelan president, Hugo Chavez, has indicated that he would like to mediate. And that has been accepted by Mr. Gaddafi already. How would this kind of intervention produce a tolerable result? What would we mediate for? For Gaddafi to stay or for Gaddafi to go?
You know, it's interesting you mentioned President Chavez. It's interesting because I do, in the public opinion polls that I do in the Arab world, one of the questions I ask is, whom among world leaders do you admire most outside your own country? Every single year I ask that. And it's been interesting because, Jacques Chirac of France was #1 after the Iraq War, 2003, because he was seen to have stood, standing up to the U.S. on the Iraq issue. Hassan Nasrallah of Hezbollah was #1 after the 2006 war because he was seen to have stood up to Israel. And last year, Hugo Chavez was #1. And in part because he was seen to have stood up against Israel on Gaza. And so Hugo Chavez actually had a positive image in the Arab public. And I think what has happened over the past few weeks, certainly in the last couple of weeks, because Gaddafi has lost, there is no one in the public opinion in the Arab world who supports Gaddafi. There may be governments in the Arab world who are hoping that Gaddafi will stay because they're worried about if they all fall, it might, come to them. And so there is a little bit of fear. So some people are probably hoping he will not fall too quickly. It might scare off their own public about the outcome of revolution. But the public, no question, is not rooting for Gaddafi, is rooting against Gaddafi. And so the fact that Chavez actually is coming across in the Arab world as taking Gaddafi's side is going to hurt him a lot in public opinion. I mean, I guarantee you he will not be on the list when I ask the question. I'm going to do another poll in April in the Arab world, including in Egypt, and I guarantee you he was not going to be up there on that list anymore because of that. Now, what should he do, or what should anybody do? I happen to think it's impossible to envision an outcome that is going to be stable with Gaddafi staying in power. I cannot imagine it. So to think that there is going to be some kind of outcome that's mediated, that's going to be acceptable to the international community, given what has happened, or that we should accept a leader who actually shot his own peaceful citizens in cold blood on large scale and use the might of the military, that we should accept that, I think that would be the wrong kind of intervention.
Thank you, Shibli. I want to follow up on Ambassador Chamberlain's remarks about the no-fly zone. I think we need to look at Libya per se. Gaddafi never built a strong army because he was always afraid of somebody bringing him down. And therefore, the only way he can go against the revolution today is through air power. And the evidence was that we saw that he used mercenaries to get in the cities. So I think only an implementation of fly zone will bring this to an end much faster and with less blood shed in Libya, just because of the fact the way it's structured. And also we have to look at the social structure of Libya because of the tribes and the composition of the society there. The soldiers are going to be shooting their own families. That's why they will not attack the cities, and that's why Gaddafi brought mercenaries. So I think a very well-organized intervention without any attacks, just a no-fly zone, is enough for the locals to take care of this problem quicker and with less blood. This is my opinion.
I just want to have a small comment on what Doctor said regarding that Gaddafi isn't that popular these days among all the other Arab governments. Yet it's true, but this is only among the Arab governments, and we are still looking at governments, not at the people inside these countries. And this is very important to look at it, because on that level, any intervention will not be that welcomed if only we look at that level. So I just want to mention it.
Who's got the microphone, please? Yeah.
Sin lugar a duda que sabemos que las redes sociales contribuyen al sistema democrático de cualquier país. En el febrero del 2001, el presidente Fernández escribía un artículo el cual llamó Democracia Electrónica. En ese momento me parecía un artículo sumamente, no voy a utilizar la palabra sensacional, pero sí alentador. El hecho de poder configurar alrededor de uno movimientos interesantes, importantes a través de las redes sociales, el hecho de no tener que contactar personas físicamente, sino virtualmente, le daba una configuración, digamos que casi divina en aquel momento. Apelaba el presidente Fernández, en ese momento conocedor de las situaciones internacionales, a que las redes sociales constituyen un mecanismo y, digámoslo mercadológicamente, un canal de distribución del sentir de una sociedad, no importa lo lejano que estemos el uno del otro. Recuerdo que en tono de broma, y voy a decir algo en público, le dije al presidente Fernández, lo único que le refuto es que no hay el contacto físico, que tendría que escribirle un email a mi mamá para decirle te amo o te quiero. Sin embargo, hoy día ya sabemos que ese es un mecanismo legítimo para constituir verdaderos valores democráticos y que es un canal apropiado para apelar a la democracia como uno de los mecanismos políticos legítimos. Pero me pregunto ahora en Egipto, ¿cuál es la agenda a seguir? ¿Cuál es el calendario que tienen para poder hablar de un verdadero Estado de Derecho? ¿Cuál es la agenda que tienen para hablar de elecciones libres, para utilizar a los partidos políticos como instrumento verdadero del sentir de una sociedad que quiere estar representada, pero evidentemente basada en uno de los mecanismos idóneos de cualquier democracia, la elección del pueblo?
Bueno, yo voy a hacer un resumen y una traducción del comentario y de la pregunta. Well, the question from the member of the audience was, she first made remarks and a description about the role of social networks in this process and how it was proven that it constituted a mechanism for promoting democracy. And I've heard your comments about the specific role on social networks in the process, so you might want to share it with the audience. And then she asked, what's next for Egypt? What's in the agenda? Are there planned elections? When will the Egypt people will be able to freely elect their leaders? She didn't make a question. I'm asking you to make some remarks about the role of social networks in this specific process, and then the question was the other one about what's next for Egypt.
I think there was some statistics or something about who's the city or who's the country that is using Facebook the most around the Arab world. And we came number one. People in Egypt, especially the youth, they loved Facebook. But we didn't know that it will have that such strong impact. and such a role in the revolution. And I think this is the first electronic revolution in the world. So I think it all started with the page of Khaled Said. He is a young Alexandrian boy, a young man who was brutally beaten by the police. And there was a page that was made for him by Wa'il Ghunim, and a lot of people sympathized with the guy. He was just an ordinary young man who was doing nothing, just surfing in the internet on a cafe, and then he was beaten by police until he died. And the picture of the body of Khaled Said was shown in the page, and it was something shameful. So I think it started from there. On the Facebook, it started from there. People kept talking and connecting and circulating news and sharing other videos and sharing other data about how aggressive and how oppressive the police forces are becoming. And so when the page of Khaled Said or other pages like 6th of April started to call for such protests, many young youth were ready to get involved. They had the reason why to start taking a role in such place. They all felt that Khaled Said represents them, or they all felt that they see themselves in him. They saw that what happened to this guy can happen to anyone. So it's now or never. They have to take an action towards this. So I think everyone was sharing that. Everyone was talking about what is happening and what happened. Even the elections, the parliament elections that took place, the videos of what was happening in the voting, it was everywhere. We always heard about how they cheated in the elections, but we never saw it for real. This time it was everywhere on the internet. We shared videos, we talked about it from other governorates, people signing elections papers. So the frustration was getting more and more, and it was all over every part in Egypt. No information was hidden anymore. And using the Facebook and using Twitter and using such tools was making it easier for everybody to know what was happening. And easier for, in Egypt, it was always hard for people to come together. It was always hard to organize people the classic ways. So using the internet was another way of organizing people, another way of mobilizing things, another way of getting people together without really actually getting together. Everything was decided on the internet, the places of the protests, the dates, where to start, where to march. Everything was started from there. So I think we owe a lot to the internet and a lot to the Facebook and the Twitter.
The second part of the question about,
Okay, I'll just tell you something that is very strange. That before the revolution and until the 11th of February, I didn't have a Facebook. I have to admit it. Yes. I didn't. I was using my BlackBerry, so all my communication was on the BBM. But I never used the Facebook, and the reason why is maybe the thinking was that is only intrusion into the personal life, and that's it. But also the government, by the way, the government was also controlling all the social media. The only social media that was not controlled was the BBM. And they tried. 1 month ago, when they heard that all the Facebook, Twitter issues and BBM are starting to causing problem because they were monitoring, and not the type of problem they had expected, only that people started to talk about politics and they were not able to catch all these people. So they decided 1 month ago to close the Facebook and the BBM and the Twitter. And I think that they got some report from their secret services or so telling them that don't do this because this will end up with really bloody end. So they let it go, but regarding the social networks, I think, as Maha said, it's the virtual underground life that where people can share their ideas and maybe say what they cannot say out loud. So this is the impact of these, the social networks. The question was regarding the future, what we will do, the elections, yes. I just want to add something regarding the Facebook, that there was a proposition, and let's not take it as funny as it seems, that people thought, why don't we do our elections on the Facebook? This came out like a week ago, and I don't know, maybe in a year time or so there will be a mechanism developed that people can do so, but at least this is how people saw the Facebook and the social network that attractive. Regarding the elections, I think we have elections in September, and it was announced that also this is one of the very important changes, that to elect in Egypt there was a very difficult barrier. We have an ID, a normal ID, which says that I'm Egyptian, my birth date is so and so and so, I'm living at that place. But to go for the election, whether parliamentary election or the presidential, I had to go to the police station and get another card, which is called election card. And this election card, you can get it only at a certain time during the year, which is, I think, just 1 month in December. And it was never announced, so this was refraining a lots of people. The only two, supporters that were carrying this election card, whether the ruling party, because they were trying to make to their supporters this kind of card, and believe me or not, they were doing this card to dead people. Because it's easy, it's not the ID. Yes, he goes, he opened the books, and he said that this guy that was dead 10 years ago, he has now an election card. And there were votes. Yes, it's very funny, but this is what was happening. So the election card was cancelled. So now we're able to go to the election with our Egyptian ID. We're all Egyptians, so we can go with our Egyptian ID. And definitely this will put up a very big barrier on everybody. So elections are in September. Now currently the situation for the parties, the only thing that is not clear, that they still didn't allow for initiation of new parties. We don't know when they will allow this. It has been asked for a month now that they should start it. Not yet started. We have 21 party in Egypt. There was only 1 player and 20 dummy, so we don't have any parties now, true parties. So if this is going to happen, I think also they allowed in the new reforms presented for the legislation that people members in party, they can go for elections. So this is the status now. And I think all Egyptians are ready to go to the boxes to see what's going to happen.
Thank you, Ayman. I think we learned a new trick also to implement our future elections here. But anyway, that's a joke. Would like to pass the floor to His Excellency President Fernandez. He has some words before we conclude this event.
Thank you. If you allow me, I will speak in Spanish. So we are in the air, and some people might understand me better in Spanish. Bueno, quisiera en primer lugar, por supuesto, agradecer la presencia de los panelistas y felicitarles por tan magníficas intervenciones, por los testimonios que han tenido de su participación en la Plaza de Tahrir, así como por el enfoque analítico que nos han brindado, no solo de lo acontecido en Egipto, sino el cómo todo esto tiene un efecto en el Medio Oriente y en el norte de África. Yo creo que es útil extraer algunas lecciones de lo que hemos escuchado aquí esta noche. para colocar en un sentido histórico y en una perspectiva política cómo ocurren revoluciones. Lo interesante es, en primer lugar, que esta ha sido un acontecimiento inesperado. No es un episodio aislado, pero sí un acontecimiento inesperado. Nadie estaba esperando que esto iba a ocurrir en estos momentos. Y se inscribe, por consiguiente, en una tendencia que estamos viendo en acontecimientos históricos contemporáneos. Nadie estaba a la espera de la caída del muro de Berlín. Fue una sorpresa. Nadie estuvo esperando el colapso de la Unión Soviética. Nadie esperaba el desmoronamiento de las democracias populares de Europa del Este. Nadie estuvo esperando los ataques terroristas del 11 de septiembre del 2001. Por tanto, hay una primera característica del mundo contemporáneo que es el acaecimiento de acontecimientos inesperados. Lo segundo interesante que hemos escuchado esta noche es que se ha tratado de un movimiento revolucionario sin líderes visibles, reconocidos, ni siquiera organizaciones establecidas como los hermanos musulmanes jugaron el rol protagónico en los acontecimientos de Egipto. Jóvenes, utilizando nuevas tecnologías de comunicación. Se trata, por consiguiente, de una ciberrevolución llevada a cabo por ciberactivistas, que es como una nueva característica de cómo se movilizan estos acontecimientos. Pero al mismo tiempo que no se trata de episodios aislados, sin embargo se trata de episodios desatados sobre la base de frustraciones acumuladas. Y en el caso específico de esta región del mundo, se ha insistido, no es una revolución desatada por problemas económicos. Esto no ha sido motivado fundamentalmente por una crisis alimentaria, es por la opresión, por la falta de libertad, por la falta de democracia que esto se ha desatado. Estaba pendiente, el doctor Shilby nos ha dicho, en muchas encuestas que había estado realizando durante años, este fenómeno se veía incubado, se veía venir, se sabía que había un disgusto, que había una inconformidad. Por tanto, se estaba, digamos, creando las condiciones para que en algún momento esto se produjese, pero no se sabía cuándo ni cómo iba a ocurrir. Entonces, son acontecimientos que tienen raíces profundas y que se expresan entonces como una reacción contra el autoritarismo, contra la opresión y contra la falta de libertad. Un tanto diferente en ciertos aspectos a la transición democrática de América Latina. En América Latina había dictaduras, las dictaduras en Argentina, en Uruguay, en Brasil, que estaban descalificadas desde el punto de vista político, pero tuvo que haber ocurrido una crisis económica y fue la combinación de lo económico con lo político lo que dio origen a la transición democrática de América Latina. En el caso específico del Medio Oriente, son países ricos, países petroleros, países donde hay, digamos, un cierto nivel. Fíjese que en Túnez, un alto nivel educativo. En Egipto, jóvenes con un alto nivel educativo. El asunto es que han sido excluidos, están marginados y por tanto hay una frustración latente que lo convierte en una fuente, por consiguiente, de inestabilidad, de cuestionamiento y de estallido político-social. Entonces se trata pues de un fenómeno todavía inacabado, empieza en Túnez, un hecho simbólico, se extiende entonces a Egipto y de ahí se ha extendido a otros países, a Bahrein, a Omán, a Yemen, Jordania, Argelia, Libia, que es el caso que ahora está en el centro de la atención pública porque se ha convertido también ya no solo en una revolución, sino en una guerra civil, porque ya también con las características de Libia son tribus, son grupos tribales. El coronel Gaddafi pertenece a una de las tres tribus que ahora están en conflicto por el dominio territorial. Pero hay un elemento importante en todo esto que nos atañe a nosotros aquí en la República Dominicana y que yo creo que de una gran trascendencia. Como resultado de la ocurrencia de estos acontecimientos en el Medio Oriente y en el norte de África, el precio del petróleo se ha disparado. Teníamos petróleo a 85, 86 dólares el barril hasta principios del mes de enero. Ayer llegó a 102 dólares el barril de petróleo. Y por supuesto el argumento que se plantea no es que ha habido una interrupción de la oferta ni un incremento de la demanda, sino que el precio se ha disparado en anticipación a lo que pueda ocurrir en la región. Claro, cuando se habla de que es una reacción anticipada, sabemos que ha habido especulación y que mucha gente ha ganado millones de dólares solamente con que se está anticipando lo que puede ocurrir. Pero hay un hecho que sí debe preocuparnos, y es que Bahrein, que está también bajo protesta, es donde se refina el petróleo de Arabia Saudita. Arabia Saudita ha respondido que si hay una interrupción del suministro de petróleo de Libia, que produce diariamente 1.6 millones de barriles de petróleo, en el mundo diariamente se producen 87 millones de barriles de petróleo, por tanto lo de Libia no es un peso importante. Si Libia dejase de producir, Arabia Saudita ha dicho ya que produciría 2 millones de barriles diarios para suplir al mercado mundial. Pero ¿qué ocurre si no se puede refinar el petróleo de Arabia Saudita en Bahrein? Entonces sí se produciría un déficit en el suministro mundial y entonces sí el precio del petróleo podría dispararse enormemente. El presidente Hugo Chávez aparece hoy en la prensa, pronostica a 200 dólares el barril de petróleo si continúa el conflicto en el Medio Oriente. Yo diría, si se interrumpe el suministro de petróleo de Arabia Saudita, llegaría por lo menos a 300 dólares el barril. Y por supuesto, para un país como la República Dominicana, no habría solución a una situación de esta naturaleza. La República Dominicana no podría mantener estabilidad económica con petróleo a 300 dólares el barril. Por supuesto, esto sería algo transitorio, algo temporal, porque la situación en algún momento tendría que calmarse. Pero fíjense ustedes, algo que aparentemente está remoto, está distante de nosotros, lo que pueda acontecer en Bahrein, y sin embargo podría afectar sensiblemente la vida de todos los dominicanos. Hay por consiguiente una interdependencia, hay una interrelación, una interconexión en lo que está pasando en el mundo. Algo que luzca muy remoto y muy distante de nosotros, sin embargo puede afectar la vida individual de cada uno de nosotros. Y es lo que está pasando en estos momentos en el caso del norte de África y el Medio Oriente. Desde la República Dominicana tenemos que prestarle mucha atención a lo que está aconteciendo. El deseo nuestro es que todo esto pueda llevarse en paz, que la transición democrática se produzca efectivamente, que haya libertad, que haya democracia, que haya justicia social en la zona, pero la continuidad de la violencia no es positivo para nadie, ni para el mundo árabe, ni para el mundo occidental, ni para la República Dominicana. Por tanto, estar alertas a estos temas, darles seguimiento, es clave para nosotros porque tiene que ver con nuestra propia supervivencia como nación y con nuestras posibilidades de prosperidad y de estabilidad. Yo creo que esta ha sido una noche sumamente enriquecedora, ha sido ilustrativa, hemos conocido detalles de un proceso que se ha desatado y que está en curso, que sigue inconcluso. Por tanto, quisiera agradecer a Mustafa, quisiera agradecer a nuestros distinguidos panelistas que han venido desde Egipto, desde la Plaza Tahrir, los hemos traído en vivo para escuchar sus testimonios, y hemos traído a dos distinguidos analistas que además están involucrados, digamos, en proveer información a gobiernos para tomar decisiones respecto a estos acontecimientos. Creo que ha sido una noche memorable aquí en FUNGLODE para entender este gran acontecimiento empezando la segunda década del siglo XXI. A todos ustedes, muchas gracias por su presencia aquí esta noche. And to all of you, thank you